So in one of my recent videos, I explained that the trading post is one of the best ways to make gold. And now I wanted to start a quick mini-series where I talk about specific methods how to make gold using the trading post. And in this video, I want to explain flipping. I'm Summer, and without much further ado, let's jump right in. So before I get into the details, I want to explain some general stuff about the trading post that is important to understand so that you can start making gold with flipping. So the trading post in Guild Wars 2 is a really cool thing. It's a website inside the game. But the trading post is like a transaction auction house for every single player. And it makes direct player trading, like in other RPGs, a little bit unnecessary. There is a small but to this statement. And the reason for that is that there will be some cut, some tax on the stuff that you trade. So how does that work? So if you want to sell an item, you are the person that has to pay the tax. So everyone that buys something doesn't have to buy any more than he would normally, because the tax is solely on the seller. But you also have to understand how the tax works. Let me do some quick calculation for you so that you understand it. So let's say we have 100 mystic coins and you want to sell those. Yeah? So if you sell them at the trading post, you have two options. You can either instant sell or list them. Both options are valid to some extent. You have to be aware that, of course, the instant selling gives you instantly the gold back. The sell listing gives you the ability to sell it for a higher price, but you won't get the gold instantly. But there's another thing that takes into account, and it says right here, and it's the listing fee and the exchange fee. Together they make the transaction fee. So what does that mean? The listing fee is the fee that is on the item that you put there, you know. So if you want to put something on the sell order, not direct buy, but on the sell side, you have to pay a listing fee. And this listing fee is 5% of the amount of gold that you listed for. It's really important to understand. It's the listing price. Yeah? And if you then sell the item, you will have to pay an additional 10% tax of the exchange fee. And together you have then a tax of 15%. So if you now want to sell an item instantly using the buy listing, then you of course also have to pay the exchange fee of the 10%, but despite that you don't list anything, you still have to pay the listing fee of 5%. So you always have to pay the 15% exchange fee. It's not dependent on if you want to go for the insta sell or the sell listing. The advantage of going for the sell listing is of course that you got more money, and at the cost of some patience. However, you also have to mention that you can be undercut. But we will get to that in the later section of the video. The game is quite nice there because you then can go hover over the total price and you will see the estimated profit. You can see I will now make with the 100 mystic coins 187 gold and 1 silver, or let's say 2 silver. If I list them, I would make 188. You know, so it's more, but the difference can be marginal. If it's almost nothing, I would say the better option is to go for the instant sale. But I would say 99% of the items you get more gold for your buck by selling it on the listing option. So that's the general basic. So you have to pay 15% or 10% of your value of your item. Of course, you can also go for some direct player trade where you would send it via mail and get 100%, so to say. Or use the Trading Post Overflow Discord where you get some nice trades as well. But I'm talking about flipping with the Trading Post. So, flipping with the Trading Post, how does that work? The idea here is now that you buy items for a low price and sell them for a higher price. And then the cut that you make is higher than the transaction fee that you have to pay. So you have to make up for the money that you give the system back, the tax. So if you find items that are worth doing with this, you can make profit just from using smart selling. And typically you do a buy listing for an item that is rather cheap, and then you sell it for a higher price and you list it for a higher price. And if the gap between the buy and the sell is high enough, you can make quite a nice profit. You always have to keep in mind, it depends on the item that you are flipping. Some items have a high difference between buy and sell, and they don't go often over the table. This means you make some amount of gold with every trade. You can go also for items that are really fast exchanged, so the supply and demand is really high, but the gap is smaller. Both of those are totally valid. So I have a really good website that I want to share today with you. So before I continue, I would like to tell you that only a small percentage of you are subscribed. So if you enjoy this video and want to help me and my channel, please subscribe. I would really appreciate it. If you want to support me even more, check out my YouTube or Patreon memberships and receive some fancy special benefits. Now back to the video. So this website is, link is in the description. It's called GW2bltc.com. And when you start on the home screen, so to say, you even see it directly, the items to flip page. If you click on it, you can then get a list of all the items that are on the trading post that then are worth to flip. You see it here in the profit column. You see you make almost 7 gold profit just for one item if you flip the vintage Black Lion weapon box. So that would mean you will put in a buy listing on the highest price, just 1 copper more than this guy already has. And then when you get it, you will sell it for 1 copper less than the sell price. And then you will make this amount of profit. And that's really good for one item, of course. But you have to be aware of 2 things. First of all, it doesn't sell that often. So the sold and bought values are high, but not that high, So you might not get it that fast. Yeah. So you have a limit of how many you can get and how much gold you can make. Another thing to think about is how often do you get overbid or undercut? So overbid would mean that you have your buy order 1 copper above this guy, and how long does it take for another guy to come there and buy list for 1 copper more than you have? Because then your buy listing is worthless. So you won't get any return from that. Of course, you don't lose anything for it, but you don't get anything for your time that you spent listing it. This is the first thing. And the second thing is, of course, the undercut. So if you get the item and you sell it for 1 copper less than it's already here, and there might be another guy that comes for and sells 1 box for another copper less. So you would be undercut and your item won't sell first. It will sell second, but there can be multiple undercuts and it will take even longer. And if items are really high priced, and there are low amounts of items that go over the table, this can be really beneficial to understand that it might not be worth it to trade this like this, because then you will sit on a lot of vintage boxes or a lot of buy listings that are not being filled. So keep that in mind. But of course, if you look at those items, if you list a lot of them, you don't have to list all of them, but if you go to this page, you can see there are multiple pages full of items that you could flip. And if you then check out which items sell often and are bought often enough, which offers and demands are, so to say, in your reach, which do you think that makes sense, you have to test it out for yourself. But this is a really good website to check which makes sense to do. And that will also change. You can't always go for the same item, because sometimes it will change, that it will not be sold that often anymore, or it might change the profit because someone undercuts really heavily or something. It's really important to understand that you have to check every single time. But if you do that, you can go for 50 gold an hour if you know what you're doing. So it's really easy. It's just using this website, and you have a lot of options. So I would also recommend to not only go for always the first page, because of course there are a lot of high selling items, but you should also go for different pages to not be, let's say, in competition with a lot of other guys that are flipping. So the options filter here is really good. So you can, for example, say, I don't want only 20 items that are sold per day. So all of those is per day. I want to go for at least 200 items that are sold. And if I do that, I get totally different items, you know. They have less profit, but of course they are sold way more often, and therefore you might flip a lot of more of them. So you don't go only for one of prismatic ingots, you might go for 10 or something. And then you would make same amount of profit than you would for doing one Black Lion vintage weapon box, you know. So you always have to think about it. It's all about the total amount of gold that you can get, not the profit per one item. And of course, a lot of stuff makes sense to flip, you know, even if it's in the 1-digit silver reach, it's still worth, you know, it's still worth to do, because if there's enough sold and bought offers and demand is fine, then you can actually make money by doing this. You just have to do it and just list it all the time, check if you're overbid, undercut, and then do it. Of course, always keep in mind that as soon as you get the item, there will be around, let's say, 90 to 95% of the items you get will sell. But 5% of the items, or maybe 10%, depends on what you are buying and selling, will not sell because they will be undercut. And at this moment, you actually lose money, you know, because if you get undercut and the item won't sell, you still already have paid the listing fee of 5%. Keep that in mind, that might happen, and if you invest a lot of money, 5% of those listing fees might you have to pay twice or even multiple times, you know, because you just get undercut all the time. Of course, take into consideration which items are doing that, what happens often, then you might not do that item again, don't flip it again. But in general, it's a huge amount of items actually sell if you do that like that over time. You just have to be patient. And that's the whole thing about flipping, is to be patient, to do your research, and then do just really frequently do your check, overcut, underbidding, check what you have to, which items you would go for today, which are worth it, and then do it as often and as long as you want, and you get a lot of gold just by doing it. It's not the most exciting way of making gold, but it's a really easy way. Everyone can do that. Of course, you have to be a little bit, you know, have to have a little investment gold. You can start with nothing. That's just not working. But I think the area of entry is really low because you don't need a lot of gold. You can start with maybe even 10, 20 gold. You can start because you can just invest into small ticket items that are not worth that much, and then you don't have a lot of gold sitting in the trading post and waiting for you to get more, you know. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like. If you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.